We want to start co-creating with you here today, and just saying that this is the first time we do it in this format. So this is a prototype, and I'm very glad that you're here and that you're such a nice bunch of people, so we don't have to be afraid. And in the end we'll have an open discussion and it opens up, and I hope you will all be inspired. And don't you just hate it, I do, when events or articles or books or whatever on sustainability and how a future world should be start with threats and start with a description of the crisis we're in. So I hope this sets a different tone, and for myself, I just said I will never gonna do this ever again. I will not start any article, any video, any event whatsoever with a long description of the crisis we are in, because I assume you all know that. And we don't need to drag us down. So I really want to start with something positive, where we want to go to. Something which gives us energy and which sort of prepares us for our best potential, where we actually have to tap into and where we want to go to. And interestingly, I just visited Hansi Freinacht, to make a video with him. And I'm very glad that Marilyn and Alexander are perfect hosts. I stay at their place, and so we talk as well a lot. And interestingly, as well in Lund with Hansi, and you asked me questions about where I came from, and then Alistair said, show them a picture of how you've been looking. That in the corner there, that's me. And I just showed this picture because I realized through the discussion with you guys, the better world my heart knows is possible stems from this time in my life, when I was in a very special kind of German youth movement, which was sort of the first Woodstock in the 1800s. But still there are some groups doing this kind of stuff, and it's all about getting out in nature, making music, writing poems, practicing, experimenting with love, free love, romanticism, settling in nature and making everything beautiful and being dressed in this old kind of stylish, romantic fashion. And then in the middle, there's a claim this group gave themselves as a part of this claim, and it's that they want to do everything they do out of inner truthfulness, innere Wahrhaftigkeit, inner truthfulness. And I realized through the discussions with you that this is actually where I come from, and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing still. So that was a very important phase in my life.
What's the name of the organization?
Huh?
What's the name of the organization?
The Wandervogel.
Yeah.
But it's the broader sense, it's just a group of a whole sort of loosely connected network. It's called the German Youth Movement. And since then, I try to get back to the feeling of how community and nature can coexist in a very poetic and artful and aesthetic way. Maybe that's what drives me still. And the first station where the work I'm still doing now and the Cocreation Foundation builds upon is actually permaculture. Because I very early as a student found out about two things, about storytelling in old traditions and about permaculture. And permaculture seemed to offer the way how I could consciously design this kind of future I was envisioning for my own life at that time, only for myself, my own life, maybe my community, my friends, my family, living somewhere on a farm, farming for own food, being self-sustainable, self-sufficient and in a sustainable way, doing craft, all this kind of romantic ideas. And so I took a permaculture design training in the UK with the Permaculture Academy there. And when I came back, still being a student to Germany, I found that at that time there was permaculture already. There's an institute, the Permaculture Institute from the Academy, but the education, the training wasn't functioning anymore. So I took the British model of the Permaculture Academy and I founded the Permaculture Academy in Germany. And parallel to my studies for 7 years, I did permaculture trainings, courses. I gathered a network of teachers in Germany. We facilitated and designed ecological projects, eco-villages, and so on. And that was a very hippie-ish time. It's like all these colorful, I just get this lots of color community hippies on there. And it was a lovely time, but it also took me sort of, I really got the green meme in a very mean way. Because I was dragged down after the 7 years, you know, in quarrels of power and money issues and what's bad in society and what I could do and what I couldn't do and that everything has to be done in consent and so on and so on. So I pulled out of this because I thought this kind of design, like designing the surroundings, how you do things as a community is great, but if it just works in a sort of green hippie milieu, just in this very sort of little box of people, it will not change society. And by then I knew it has to be bigger. Like this design approach has to become bigger on a larger scale, and I have to find ways to really get into society. So what I did with my partner then, I founded the Institute for Participatory Design, and I cut my hairs. I had really short hair at that time. I put on a suit. I had this institute with this really strange academic name, which no mayor on the countryside or whatever could pronounce. But that was exactly the intention, because it was meant to be a Trojan horse. Like doing still permaculture design and sustainability design and community work, but doing it in disguise. And at that time, I think that was a good strategy. Nowadays, it's probably not necessary anymore. And we developed on the methodology of permaculture design and other design and Gestalt methodologies. And we call it participatory design, and we work mainly for municipalities, communities, groups in the city. So we really try to work with every kind of people there is. For example, here in Trier with people with a very low education. Some of them couldn't even read and write in third or fourth generation. That was a very special place, a social, what you call it, Brennpunkt, they call it in Germany. So you see, this is an old sports hall. And these people are actually designing their whole city quarter. They're reading maps, they're drawing, they're designing, because my partner is a landscape architect and city urban planner. And we wanted to prove that even people without education who are not able to read and write can actually design their own environments and circumstances so that they can improve on their living conditions where they are. And we started with small projects, we did large ones. This one's in Berlin. We sort of tried really to work with everyone and everything here. We worked, we did actually work on the landscape design itself, not only on the design, but also on implementing and building it. Here with a group that's a home for disabled people with mental and physical disabilities. And they did design the garden and the park they are living in, and they build it with us. And it was possible. And they feel so empowered. So today, if I go there, they remember me, and they're really grateful and thankful of what we did with them. We went into starting to work with sort of large-scale constellation works. Here, this is a group where every head is a sort of entity in the city, and they talk with each other, and they move around and find sort of the hidden structures in the fabric of the city for themselves. And we work with a lot of creativity techniques, often on large-scale plans. As here, for example, this is a whole city quarter completely rebuilt on a military airport. And what we also did, we founded a lot of companies, like citizen-run companies. At least, I think, 6 or 8. In villages, for example, this swimming bath was going to be shut down, and the citizens, with our help, participatorily founded a small company, and now they're running it on their own. And I just want to show you this picture. It's from the same home for disabled people, because this, for me, I don't know if you can see something, but I, of course, know the situation. This was after 2.5 years of intense work. We call it getting in resonance with the field. And some really hard discussion on how this home for disabled people should look like in the future. And this is a moment where an idea crystallized how the future for this home could look like. And in this moment, people just got up from their seats, ran to the tables with the plans and the maps, and started drawing their vision of their future. And in this picture, you have this guy here who works in the garden. He has physical disabilities. That woman here is a nurse. That is the oldest inhabitant of the home for elderly, for disabled people. He is mentally and physically disabled. And the other guy is the architect. And what you can't hear is, if you would stand there, you wouldn't hear anything, because they're not talking. They just synchronize in their drawing and planning. They did that for almost an hour without talking on the same plan. They just drew, and it was just flowing through them. It was such an amazing experience. And this is what can happen, in my understanding, if you talk about co-creation, even if it's just for people. And from all this kind of work, we develop what we call co-creative local governance. And one of our biggest projects at the moment is in Berlin, and it encompasses almost all the, sort of the larger buildings you see here. So it's directly in the city center, Berlin Mitte, where we are contracted by the administration and the local authorities to have a participatory design project and city planning project over 3 years with 38 projects, all being done in a place which is designed for participatory city development in itself. And this is the Stadtwerkstatt, so the city workshop. And we claim we make Berlin. So wir machen Berlin. City workshop. And this is the place, just to give you a picture, where we work. It's pretty simple, but it does everything it needs. So here it's a forum, but if we work there, we can do it in different ways as well. And we have events, people can come in, it's open more or less on every work day. And sometimes we get out as well, make a pop-up participation in the city center, just somewhere where the actual planning is happening. This is how it looks if people meet there, and this is how it looks if we're getting into work with them. We're trying to be as haptic, as on the plan, building models, prototyping ideas as possible with everyone, even if they're not professional planners. And what came out of it, what I just called co-creative local governance, is over the course of 14 years doing this work in sort of all sizes of municipalities, we found out that there are certain patterns which repeat themselves. We try and claim that our work, I need longer, sorry.
Yeah, 10.
Yeah. That our work, now I'm out of I lost my thread. That we try to custom make or even sort of tailor make every process for every client and every city and every community and every group, but still there are patterns which repeat themselves. And every time you'll find a little bit different design solution for this pattern, but the pattern kind of is the same. For example, that's why I show you the pictures, having a place where people can come to co-create is a very strong pattern which enables local co-creative governance. If you don't have this place, you have every time you have to look for new places, and sometimes it's a town hall, then you're going outside and so. But if you have this place where people can just come and go as they like, that helps the governance process. So over time, we developed a technique not only to facilitate co-creative processes in events, but we understood that there are larger patterns which enable and guide these smaller events. And that's what we call governance structures, so governance processes. And we found out that you can, this is something like an organigram of the governance process of the city workshop in Berlin. So you have to think about how the different groups and how the different stakeholders, what their roles are, what the methods are, how you want to create overlaps, and how this whole system works so that actually over time a positive creation of the environment happens. And we've been doing that for so long that we started to do some research on that as well. And we did, for example, a research for the Umweltbundesamt, that's the federal German sustainable, what's called, the Environment Agency. So the Federal Environment Agency. And we made the study for them to find out if there is a way to update the political structure of Germany in order to allow for more participation so that their environmental programs are better linked to the citizens and to the public. Because they know they have so many great programs, but as long as there is no public sort of citizen backup, they won't work. So they understand that in order for the environmental programs to work, they have to look into the governance structures of Germany to change them, to make them more participatory, more engaging, and more co-creative. So this is all great, but all my life I had these charts in my head, and you know them. And they are the charts of exponential growth. And if you're a designer like me, you know that if you don't have a clue where your whole sort of system steers at, you can't design for it. So the question always was, so if we think on a global level what to do, how to govern ourselves on a global level, as long as everything just goes exponentially up and up and up, there are no frame conditions we can apply our design to, we can design solutions for. So that was really, for me, it was dragging me down all the time until I saw this graph. and someone pointed out that we did make a mistake. I don't know, I think he's here today. Nicholas? Yeah, thanks a lot. Totally correct. We can speak about it later. Here's a chart by UN projections. Now, and I just want to give you, for me, this was the most important finding I had in the last years, that it is actually not exponentially going up and up and up. We have already, and I'm citing Hans Rosling, he's a doctor and worked as a statistician, that we're not getting more and more and more and more and more people. So we don't have to design for a world of 50 billion or 60 billion or 70 or 100 billion. It'll stop because we've already reached peak child, and that means that the curve of the world population will slowly fade out, as you can see up there. And the estimate is we'll become between 10 and 12 billion people. It's an estimate. Of course, it can still go in all directions, because this is predicting the future, and that never works. But it is fairly reasonable to believe in this estimate. Now, for me, this is really, really important, because now, for me, I just know, okay, 10 to 12 billion people, that is the number I can count on. That is a frame condition I can work with. So now we have to start working on solutions for exactly that. And as a designer, and you might know design thinking as a methodology, you start with a design challenge. So you frame the question you want to get to a solution to, and that is the question I came up with. And maybe you can rephrase it to your liking, but for me, this is the question, this is the global design challenge. How I would put it is, how can we co-create a world for approximately 10 to 12 billion people in peace, freedom, and ecological health and abundance for all and everything? And now where I know it, I know what to do as a designer. I can start with my design process. But I put something else as well, and just to give you that, that's the co-creator's imperative. I just like these things. And with a twink in the eye, of course. Yeah? It's a sincere irony. Do everything which will help to find answers and solutions to the global design challenge. That, for me, is my co-creator's imperative. And do nothing which prevents finding answers and solutions to the global design challenge. That's quite a good direction for me and my work, and in the Cocreation Foundation. So our mission in the Cocreation Foundation is to explore, develop, and establish the cultural technique of co-creation for better global governance. I put this sort of bit by bit, just that it really can sink in. Our mission is to explore, develop, test, and establish. That means we don't know yet. We don't claim we know the answer how to do co-creative global governance. That's why we meet all you guys. We need to co-create this. It's a design process. We have to find out. And we say that co-creation is a cultural technique which puts it on the same level as reading and writing, as agriculture, as digitalization. It has the same as book printing. It has the same importance to our development as a human community on this earth, that we learn as a global community what co-creation can mean for us and to us. I mean, just to really drive it home that it is this important. It's not just a fancy this and that methodology which for the next 20 years is really fancy and then you discard it. It goes deeper. It is like, how can we really co-create? I mean, you of all people know it. I don't have you to tell you. Co-creation, and for what? for a better global governance. And now I didn't put the picture in here, but sometimes I show pictures of people negotiating Brexit, for example, or negotiating climate change, or negotiating a trade agreement. There's this table, there's some water on it, and then these guys are sitting there. Guys, most of the time.
Just saying.
If Angela Merkel is with them, it's also women, but most of the time it's guys. And this is the mode in which global governance is being done today. It is by negotiation and not by co-creation. So they're not sort of in this flow drawing things or envisioning the new future or whatever and then deciding how to get there, as we as designers or creators would do, but they're negotiating. If you put taxes on pigs, I'll not deliver any car tires to you anymore. Okay, so let's see if we can deal this out. So this is how we do global governance. And that's where I want to go away from. And just one last thing, because I'm just getting 5 minutes left. If I see a graph like this is world population, roughly. We're here. You are here. Now, if you don't know what's going on here, you panic, right? I mean, that's the natural state of a situation like this. Now, as I said, and you can critique that, you can say, no, I don't believe in this, but I think it's pretty sort of, we can be more or less sure that it's something like this is happening. Maybe this, maybe this, maybe this, whatever. This probably not. Certainly not this, and certainly, hopefully, that would be a nuclear war. Not this, but something like this. This is the 10 to 12 billion. Now, this phase is called the Great Acceleration. We just saw, yeah? I believe this phase more or less is over. I mean, we still have this, but I call it something else. Because now, here, this is what many scientists say we need to do is the great transformation. This here, I don't know, but this phase here, the one we're going to enter, this just has to be, wink, the great. Yes, of course, the great co-creation. Nothing else is possible, because this is this is what we have to prepare. I mean, this is not happening by itself. The nice world we just talked in this first circle, in the spiral, this is just not happening by itself. We have to consciously design it. At least that's what I believe. It's a process of building, it's a process of design, of development. And while this happened unconsciously, just as a sort of result of our lifestyles, especially in Western parts, this damn well has to be consciously designed so that we make sure and help to reach this state. And this state, I don't know what this world will look like, but I think it can work and it can be a good world. And this is what we have to co-create. And this is where my input for today starts. Thank you. And before we discuss it, I would love to get back together with you in a co-creation workshop. And then at the end, we can wrap it all up, okay? And now, one of the projects we will be doing at the the Cocreation Foundation, one of the first projects will be the Global Resonance Project. Because we have this idea that before you start designing something, before you start designing methodologies for global governance, co-creatively, you have to get into resonance with what is already there, what we already know, what you all here know, and all the other people in the world as well. And we have to get in touch with them and connect them and really get something going, a co-creative process on a global scale, hopefully someday. And the way we want to do it is for the next 2.5 years or 3 years to do, for example, events like this, meet all the sort of brilliant artists, activists, intellectuals, politicians who have an understanding or some vague idea of how this could possibly work out. And what will come out of it, there will be a process documentation and, of course, a very old format, an old cultural technique, a book on co-creative global governance. And this book will be a pattern language, and some of you might know the pattern language approach by Christopher Alexander. If you don't, please look into it. Because for me, for the kind of work we all do, this is one of the most valuable things I have stumbled upon in my life. The pattern language approach by Christopher Alexander.
I can support that to 100%. The Ekskäret Oak Island was designed along the lines of those patterns.
Actually, we've been there, Alistair and I. Thanks very much. And I was wondering, because it has all the elements I know are perfect patterns for a place like this. Well done. Great. Yeah. And this here as well. So, we started finding first patterns. And we already have 20. And I brought a couple of them, not all of them, because that would just blow our brains for just an hour workshop here. And this still will be very complex. But I know Alistair just told me we invited the best and the greatest facilitators and minds and professionals in the field in Sweden. So I guess we can do some complex stuff here today. So I give you an idea of these patterns, what they are, and they are no more at the moment than titles. Titles describing qualities or subjects or themes where we think that for a co-creative global governance of the future, those qualities or subjects have to be included in governance processes in a very concise and conscious way in their design. The first pattern is identity and belonging. Then we have a sense of place and context. We have personal and transpersonal processes and how they are interlinked with each other. I don't know if you remember that there was a situation at the COP climate conference where the delegate of the Maldives started to cry. And the facilitation of this event just cut him off and went on with their sort of agenda. And he was later fired by his country. So, local governance. We think actually, and you might all call this into question now, we think that the nation state is not that important. And Thomas and I talked in our interview about that as well, but that the local level is much more important to global governance than sort of the national state level. Developmental hierarchies. Whoever has read Thomas's books and Lena's knows what we mean by that.
So I don't know what that means. Can you explain?
Developmental hierarchies means that if we talk about the development of individuals and groups and even societies and maybe even humanity as it is developing, there are sort of natural stages or states in this process, and that you somehow have to deal with them if you're talking about global governance. Because someone might not be up to sitting in a spiral, but just clubbing you to death, for example, if he gets into conflict. It's a very crude example. But that's why we also think trauma and healing, especially collective trauma and healing, is important. Distribution of power and resources. And we were wondering if we should write equal. We didn't. So, distribution of power and resources. Collective intelligence. How do we get there? How can we do it in a process like, for example, climate change? Dignity, rights, and justice. And there's one last, empathy and compassion. And as I said, these are just a couple of the 20 we already have, but they are the ones we are most sure of or most certain about that they might, maybe we rephrase them or whatever. And I have some empty one, so if you want to come up with it. Now, Sanna. I was told that Sanna is just the most brilliant, bright thinker, and we're and we're just trying. We're trying this out now, because a pattern language consists of four things: a title of the pattern, challenges similar to the design challenge, the global design challenge I formulated. These challenges are always how question. How can we? We'll do that in a minute. Then discussion. We call this references. Like, I know, Thomas has a book. He wrote something about developmental hierarchy. That's a reference. We might want to look back to this book to get more deeper understanding of what this pattern might be about. Or, there's a project. Or, I know this company. Or, this guy, he just did some amazing work on whatever. So every hint, every reference you've got on this subject. And then you have the design solution, which is in the original book by Christopher Alexander is always a therefore. Do this and that. Because as designers, we want to know how to approach it. We just don't want to discuss it. We want to know how to actually apply it to the problem at hand. Sanna, what kind of pattern do you think is interesting for you?
So we go with empathy and compassion?
Yeah, let's do empathy and compassion. And we can jump wherever we want, but we, just for the sort of logical thread, we start with the challenges. So just to make it more concrete, because we're talking about something very, very abstract here. Global governance, like what the heck it is. I don't want to give you a definition or an understanding. We'll approach it by doing this workshop here. But we can think about things like Brexit or climate change, for example.
Yeah.
Those are transnational to global governance processes.
Climate change.
Climate change, okay. What's with empathy and compassion? Climate change. What is the challenge we as designers of global governance have to face or have to find solutions for if we think about empathy and compassion? Do you have any idea?
Well, how can we empathize and feel compassion for like next generations or animals? Yeah.
How can we? I see where you're going at. You say empathy and compassion is not only important for us human beings, but also for future generations,
Yes.
animals, trees, things, plants. Someone told it, said that in the first round.
Yes, all living things. And
So how can we, what?
how can we, what is the question? Build empathy, or how can we?
Maybe how can we create space for, or how can we educate, or how can we?
How can we get world leaders? Now I'm taking leaders.
Okay, you're taking
instead.
here. How can we? Yeah.
Get people.
Okay. How can we get people?
To
Yeah.
have more empathy.
Get people. We should probably say involved in global governance in any way, as a participant, as a leader, as whatever.
Yeah.
So how can we get people involved in global governance to be trained or show their empathy, or what's the problem we really face here? Maybe you can help us.
Yeah.
To widen the circle of empathy or widen the circle of compassion.
To integrate, yeah? To integrate is a nice word. To integrate, yeah, what?
Maybe we can put the word of distant others. How can we empathize for the distant others?
Distant others.
How can we get people involved in global others to integrate empathy and compassion
For distant others.
for distant others? Great.
Thanks.
So now we puzzle it,
Yes.
because that's the most fun bit here. It goes here.
And there are more challenges?
It's just that I honestly don't believe that everyone is born with empathy.
Okay, that's the next question.
So it's not right, it's not wrong. It's just that we tend, in our society, we tend to say that, all empaths, they're good people, and low empaths, they're bad people.
Okay.
But, the way I see it is, it's about
What should be?
what kind of, how broad is your perspective? Elon Musk is a low empath.
Okay,
He
what is the?
contributes with wide perspectives.
Okay.
What's the challenge?
What's the challenge then?
So the it's how it's formulated that.
No, not that. We just leave it, because this is more a brainstorm. We do a new one.
The empathy and
Yeah.
compassion.
Yeah.
Because
Try to formulate a challenge. What is the challenge between your observation? There's no right and wrong here at this. It's just okay.
How we can support people to have broader perspectives on themselves and the world.
We support, and does that have to do with empathy and compassion, or with maybe with something else?
Developmental health. Yeah.
Yeah. Support. Can you say that again? Support people
Support people.
To have a
broader.
and grow in broader perspectives. It's not a fixed position. To grow in broader perspectives for themselves and the world.
I just put it very simple because this is just a demonstration. How can we support people to have a broader perspective on global governance and so on? And
you mean is regardless of empathy level.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
so maybe this is more a question of developmental hierarchy.
Okay.
Yeah. So now we have two challenges now. Now is the question: do we have any hints or references already which can help us finding solutions on these questions? Yes?
I'm so happy you asked because I was no, seriously. But I've been writing a book, and the second upcoming book is called 7 Principles of Human Dignity. And the 7 principles is very basic because it's based on that we have human rights, but we also have human responsibility. And the human rights are directly from United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So the 7 principles are, number 1.
Just wait, before you explain this,
Yes.
because this maybe gets at this moment, as this demonstration, a little bit too deep, but I would like to share that
Yes.
in a group later on. Maria, this was a book by you?
Yes.
You write that?
Yeah, yes,
By
this is my second book.
Maria. So 7 principles of human dignity. Because this maybe belongs more to dignity, rights and justice, or is it for you more connected to your question you just put there? Well, maybe.
It's all of them.
Yeah, but maybe this, there was the connection in your brainstorm, but this just goes in here. Yeah, look at that.
Okay, I get you.
Yeah, it's a pattern puzzle. Amazing. And now,
I have that one. Personal.
yeah, just wait. Now, do you have a design solution? Like, for example, say, let's do a nice vision. Yeah, we founded the Cocreation Foundation, and they asked us to design the next 3 years of process for climate change,
Yes.
the governance process. Now they're getting to us, and you're part of our design team for this global governance process, and they're saying, you know, we have this problem of how can we support people to have a broader perspective. And we know there's this great book, second book, 7 Principles of Human Dignity by Maria. But how do we actually do it? What is the solution? Like, what do we do?
Well,
Do we have an event, or can you
Yes.
teach these 7 principles? Or
Yes.
can these 7 principles be applied
Yes.
to, I don't know,
we do a world trip.
a world trip? Like what?
Like, you know.
You're sending people on a sort of Bildungsreise, a sort of development trip through the world.
No, world tour, yes. Traveling, you know, inspiring and giving people just these easy tools. You have the right to your body.
Okay.
You're responsible for your
Okay, but I understand that. That is what you want to do.
body. Yes.
Mhm.
And to get
I am interested, what can we do exactly at this climate change conference, for example, with your approach? What would be a design solution? Maybe you have an idea?
what you're doing right now is great.
A design solution for me will that the people, for example, get a private space where they can really feel empathy and compassion with the Chatham House rule, so nobody tells anybody else. Could be, for example, like a room in silence where people are really allowed to feel the grief, the pain, the frustration, also the hatred towards whatever, you know, patronizing or being colonized stuff. Like
Okay.
that.
That's on a different subject again, so we're
Sorry,
already...
it was
No,
just
we're,
coming
yeah,
in. Yeah, it was
that's
just
wonderful.
Maybe a design solution for this empathy. and
We're brainstorming. So, Alistair just says, I'm going back to this challenge here, and empathy and design.
Yeah.
Yeah? And he says, private and safe empathy spaces. Let's try that every governance process has those, so that people can learn that, and that they can... So Angela Merkel and all the Sherpas of the whatever Brexit process, they could go to these. That sounds pretty utopian. You sure about that?
Yes.
Yes. Damn sure.
Bring that in
So we bring that in somewhere here.
where they are.
Okay. You got the idea. Sorry to just crash into your explanation, but I just wanted to get a demonstration. What we're trying to do here is with you to co-create this pattern puzzle, and with the results we will go in 2 weeks to Berlin, and we will puzzle it further.
Exactly. So we will basically continue the process
we-
with
we
also
will-
a group of other 30.
We will continue this process for the next 2.5 years, and it will be the basic structure of the pattern language of the book we will be written, and all of you, if Alistair just hasn't got your name and your address,
Yeah, so
will be
exactly. So please don't get.
will be listed
taking care of
as
all the content.
co-creation pattern puzzlers in this book as well. So, what we're doing now, this is how it works. You just got a sort of broad idea of what the idea behind it is. It is, you notice as well, it's very complex and can get very deep. Well, we're trying it anyways, and we're trying it without giving too much directions, because you're a professional group. You don't need timekeepers and all this stuff. This pattern puzzle here on the ground, you can just do whatever you want. You can work on it on solutions on your own, but I encourage you to get in small groups and just pick one and try how far you come to a design solution. And if you get stuck, you might go to the next and see what's happening there and try to help with that. So we have 4 tables, 1, 2, 3, 4. We can put the chairs to the table, so if you want to sit, or you can just create sort of small rounds here. Here is the material, the pens, and we'll have 45 minutes of this fun co-creation workshop to really
bell every now and then, you know,
Yeah.
just to tell you maybe after 30 minutes or something.
just again, challenges, how questions. Any reference you might think of can help. If it's your own work or work of others, or even if it's a great idea you just got during your discussion, or an argument, or a counter-argument, whatever might help to understand this goes on here. And as soon as you think, okay, if I'm in the position of designing not only one conference, but the whole governance process for 3 years of climate change, how would I introduce it? What would be the solution for us as facilitators, designers of these processes? That's a lot, but it's also a lot of fun. So, please.
Type readable.
Oh yeah, type readable. We need to type it down later. So, here are pens, here's the material. You can move everything on the ground as you like and just see what happens. And thanks, Sana.